Engine. Oh, Bob David just left. Amy Wilsey joined. Okay.
We are live.
Okay. You tell me when we can start.
You can start.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Stratford Board of Education Finance Committee meeting. It's Monday, April 26th, and we're doing this via video as per Executive Order 7B. We do have a quorum. I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes from March 22nd.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from March 22nd.
That's Allison. And
Second.
Thank you. Oh, Bob David. Okay, Bob David's back. All right. We're going to move into number 3, which is we have to
Do a vote, Karen, on that minute, on those minutes?
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to. Okay. Any discussion on this? Any changes? Any comments? We'll do a roll call vote. Allison?
Yes.
Janice?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Bob David? And Bob DiLorenzo?
Yes.
Bob David? I think he disappeared again. Okay. The chair votes yes. And the motion passes. Okay. Next is number 3 on the agenda for discussion, information, and possible action. Budget summary. And we'll start, I guess, with the expenditures and encumbrances.
Sure. Sounds good. Good evening, everybody. I know in your packets you did receive the monthly financial report that reflects expenses and encumbrances through March 31st. And you also received the financial status report that I've provided each month with major variance drivers that affect those accounts. Just a couple of things to highlight. You may have noticed that our projected year-end balance has increased since last month. And that's primarily a result of an increase in our projection for salaries as each month goes by. The vacant positions that aren't filled, obviously there's additional savings. And we're also making some estimates on what our substitute account may end up looking like. It's always a real guesstimate. We're never really certain what kinds of time off teachers will take as we get towards the end of the year. Obviously, contractually, they are allowed to take some of their time, but we do have historical data, but lately, between the shutdown last year and the pandemic this year, historical data doesn't really seem to help as much as it normally does, but we do utilize it. We utilize a lot of different data to come up with these estimates. You also might have noted that there is a significant increase in year-end projections for benefits, and that's primarily due to the dental insurance costs. As a district, while we're fully insured for our medical insurance, our dental insurance is self-funded, which basically means we pay claims as they come up and as they come due. And as I'm sure many of you in your own families, I don't think we've been as aggressive in going to dental appointments, and we have definitely seen that during the pandemic. Susan Nicholson and I met with our insurance reps last week, and they are telling us that they do anticipate claims increasing significantly over the summer and perhaps in the fall for dental claims. So we do right now have that things projected for year-end balance. We are considering discussing that a little bit further with the town to see if there's any way we can't set aside some of those funds into a reserve in case dental claims really do shoot up next year. And then, of course, in our professional services, the 300 category, Again, we have the UI lease deficit that you're aware of, and our clinical costs account has increased, and Heather will talk a little bit more about that. We also have reduced our projected year-end deficit in the 400 area, which is utilities, and it's not significant amount, but in doing the analysis, it does appear that some of our districts, our schools within the district may in fact have a slight overage in that account, in their electricity account, aside from flood in Stratford High School. Of course, they have indicated we will have a deficit in those two accounts. So it does offset it a little bit further. We have been monitoring natural gas a bit more closely. I think we'll be okay, but we could potentially have a slight deficit in that area as well. Obviously, we've had, I think if you really look at degree days by the time the winter ended, and we haven't really caught up with the invoices yet, we probably had a pretty average. Started off warm, and we had 3 or 4 weeks of real winter weather. So I think that's probably why, and I did notice that we did have a slight reduction in the actual budget appropriation for that area of our budget as well, but overall I think we will be okay. So we are watching the utility accounts closely. And the other thing I just wanted to mention on this report was the 500 object code, which is currently showing a projected year-end balance. And while our tuitions are in deficit by over $500,000, we are currently expecting it to be offset by savings in transportation, which I also know you're aware of. But we're also anticipating a significant year-end balance in workers' comp costs. We are trending lower than we have in the past, and fiscal year 22 was actually reduced as a result of that before it was even presented to you, because we did look at last year's history as well as this year's, and it continues to run a little bit lower than we have had in the budget in the past. So that is a saving for us as well. And I just wanted to note that as we move towards year end, it's important to just remember that our year-end balance projection provides for many guesstimates. And those are things like, we are assuming all of our supply accounts will be spent down. We're assuming all our books accounts, books in the library, books, all our equipment accounts will be completely spent. Sometimes that doesn't actually happen, so you end up with a little bit more of a balance than you anticipated. Also, we're making a lot of assumptions with regard to substitutes and in May and June, as well as unfilled positions, which actually affects both salaries and benefit lines. And I just wanted to share that with you because I know it's a little bit difficult to understand why we can't have this exact number of what our year-end balance is going to be in May and sometimes even in June. There are just so many variables that continue to hit our budget. And until special ed is completely closed out, which actually happens after June 30th, we'll get closer and closer. But I just wanted to kind of remind you of that. And if you look at my reports month to month, you'll see that they definitely get a little tighter as we get into it. And of course, we're in April, but this only reflects through March 31st. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that the transfers that will be approved this evening will take care of the current deficits that you see on the monthly financial report, except for special ed tuition and the clinical cost account. We will bring a transfer to the board next month to take care of those deficits as well. And we're also hoping to bring a request at that point to the board to consider spending some of our year-end balance. We've had a request from Ed Malloy for potentially some technology equipment, as well as what I think we all agree on. We really want to put money aside to pay down our debt for food service. So stay tuned in May. I think we'll have a busy finance committee meeting that evening, but that's our plan at the moment. And I think that basically covers our expenditures and encumbrances. And I know I always touch upon utilities in that report as well. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions? Janice?
Thank you, Karen. Pam, I have a question regarding the approved transfers. So a couple of years ago, the board at that time approved increasing that, I think, to 7,500. How do we know if a transfer, let's say multiple transfers are being made of 5,000, 3,000, from the same account or to whatever it might be, but it fell under that threshold? How are we as a board able to provide oversight of that?
That's actually reflective on your monthly financial report. If you look at the, let me just get it in front of me here. At the adjusted budget number, it's going to differ. And if that differs, it's the column that says adjusted budget. If that changes, it changes because there was a transfer out of it. So it should remain the same unless you've approved a budget transfer or you've done one internally under the $7,500.
Okay, so when I'm looking at it, that's where I should look to see if there was anything. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Bob David? You're muted. Still muted. And Janice, your hand is still up. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Regarding the structure, Pam, do you see any of that where there's multiple $5,000 questions?
I'm sorry, Bob, I didn't hear you.
I know. Are you getting multiple? Hold on a second. Let me just get off this.
He's switching over. Are you there? He's gonna come back in. Okay, there he is.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. No, we can't. Where'd you go?
Pam, if there's multiple $5,000 transactions, can you see that? I can bring it to the board's attention. I think that's what we're looking at. In the banking world, that's called structuring, but we don't have any of that going on, do we?
No, we don't. And unless there would be very few circumstances under which I can even imagine that happening. And Susan Nicholson is here. Susan, I don't know if you can think of occasions. I think the only place I can think of perhaps that happening is a salary account if we moved.
I guess the question, just to kind of dovetail, is if you see any of that, we would like to be notified. The board, I'm sure the board would, but definitely the Board of Finance wants to be notified.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair question. So thank you.
I do too.
And typically the budget transfers, they're lower dollar, they're small dollar amounts that are just kind of transferring, like an instructional supply account, it needs another $100 to cover that purchase. So they're typically small dollar amounts. Once you get into the higher dollar amounts, it's not layered on top of each other to mislead anybody.
Yeah, and Pam and I have been through a few municipalities, and you see where you have first selectmen or superintendents approving $93, expenses. You don't want to get into that as well, because that kind of it's a waste of people's time, especially on a $121 million budget.
Being aware of them is different than having to go through an approval process. So I guess we're asking to be made aware
That's my
budget
point.
transfers, and the approvals that are required by this board are 7,500 and above, but we should be aware of, because it shows an accounting practice that needs either changes or tighter monitoring if there's going to be constant changes, whether it's $100, $1,000, or $100,000. It would show if it's consistently happening, that it needs to be looked at carefully. So thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions? Okay, seeing.
Karen, I have my hand raised. It's Amy.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't see, oh, okay.
That's okay.
Now something in front of you, okay.
Just a quick question. Do we have an update about the funds left over from last year?
No, actually, I'm still trying to get a copy of the town's audit for last year, and I'm not aware if it's available or not. I haven't had a response from the town, and it was my understanding, and the way the ordinance was written for the non-lapsing account, that they cannot appropriate any funds to our account until the audit is complete. And I know they did file an extension, but I thought it was submitted on March 31st. So I'm still trying to track it down.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Your hand's still up, Amy. Do you have another question? Okay. All right, we're gonna move on to grant updates. Mr. Clemming?
Good evening, everybody. Not a lot of changes in the basic grant report this year, other than the increased, spending in each particular cell of that chart as the year goes on, or encumbrances in that chart. 3 points that I'll make update in terms of what we're working on for most of our time. One, this is the week before May 1st when the final revisions to all of our grants budgets have to go into the state if we're going to make any. So a lot of my time is being spent right now talking to the staff that oversees each grant program and finding out if the money's where they need it to be or if we need to make a revision with the state. Second item is that ESSER 2 did go in. It was technically due today, but we turned it in last week, and ESSER 2 it's been submitted, so now we're just waiting for the state to get back to us. And the third item is that we have, if you look at the report at the end on the Coronavirus Relief Fund, we have now exceeded 90% of those funds claimed and approved by the state. We're still looking for other things we can apply to it, but we've hit 90%, which, given the way the state set this up for approval, is in my opinion, pretty darn good. And I think we will find a few percent more yet before we're done.
Very good. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Clemming? Andrea?
Do we have like a definitive update or guidance on how the future ESSER and money coming in can be spent? Can it, because previously it cannot supplant, and then it was maybe it can. Do we have an answer along those lines?
We have indications that it can be used for staff to avoid layoffs and to provide continuity of services. We do not have any formal guidance yet, nor have we heard word one about an amount yet. So we're still waiting for the state to transmit information to us. The federal outline, I'll call it wasn't formal guidance. The federal outline did indicate that we could use funds to, as I said, prevent layoffs or provide continuity of services. That's as far as it went. It was literally a sentence and a half long.
Okay. Janice?
Thank you. Where are we with the plan for those funds? Like an internal plan that the board is going to review? Because I've requested that the board review this before it gets submitted. And I would like to see exact details of how those funds are going to be allocated. So whether it's 10 different people's salaries, X amount of supply, I need to see it all laid out. And my other question, well, actually, first I'll let you and Pam answer that.
So the answer to that one is there is no planning yet, really, to speak of, because there's no amount yet. They haven't told us what the amount is for the ESSER 3 or ARP ESSER, as the federal government calls it, and they haven't told us what the guidelines for spending it are.
The only thing I was going to add to that, Janice, that while we don't have a formal plan, there are many things ESSER 2 that we had hoped to accomplish, or at least fund through 2 fiscal years that we weren't able to do. So we're hopeful. We have ideas. We have student support programs that we want to continue. We may have to utilize it for some salaries if we continue down the road that we are with our limited increase in our budget. So we do have ideas, but until, as Kevin pointed out, we definitely have to know the dollar amount and we have to know the rules that govern it. So as soon as we have that information, we can move forward with putting that all on paper to share with you.
Thank you, Pam. So that's exactly what I'm asking for as well, because that should be communicated to us, even though it's not finalized. We should have an idea of what the team is planning to spend on, so we can look at that and say, and ask questions ahead of time and not wait until the last minute, right? And make any objections that we might have. Like, those ideas should be funneled to the board members already. I know, I do my own monthly budget, right? And I know I look at things and I'm like, if I had more budget, like, this is what I would do. So we all have an idea of what we would spend on, regardless of how much. And once you get that final number, then you can say, okay, this is not possible, this is possible, right? I'm looking for those ideas to be shared with us already.
We did ask for the prioritization, so, that has been asked for, and
I haven't seen anything.
Well, when you received the ESSER 2 recently, that was adjusted because we had our meeting with the town, the budget review, and Dr. Robinson can certainly expound on this, but it was quite clear that the town expects us to make up the difference in the budget utilizing these funds. So that's when we had to do a turnabout and put that $2.3 million figure in there. So we had to remove some of the student supports. And that's our concern when we get to the ARP ESSER, as it's being called. So certainly Dr. Gata and Dr. Robinson have spent numerous hours discussing the needs of the students. So I'm sure we can not only share that info with you, but we can certainly provide it to you in writing.
And Pam, that's also a part of the point I'm getting at, is for us to see what the prioritization of those extra dollars were supposed to help fix, right? And the student support that they were supposed to fund. For us not having that, it's difficult for us to argue for, right? And push to say, we need this money, we need, otherwise it's going to take away from doing this for our students, right? Like, we can't really have that conversation if we don't know those things.
So hopefully in May, we may have real direction and information with regard to ARP ESSER, because when Kevin, Dr. Robinson, and I were involved in a state meeting back in March on this exact topic, they told us that the state only had 60 days in which to get this information to towns and school districts. So that means they have to do it by May 24th. So hopefully we'll have something. And then with Dr. Robinson and Dr. Gata's guidance and input, we can certainly share that information.
But in advance of that, you're sending us the list of prioritization, right?
I will work with Dr. Robinson and Dr. Gata. The challenge we're having right now is that we have so many people reaching out to us, including the town, who all have their hands in this pot of money. And where our heads are spinning, I mean, we know what we need for students. So I think that should be priority one. So yeah, I mean, we can put something together to maybe brainstorm with you, so you know where discussions
Well,
have
no,
gone.
Pam, so you saying you and team, knows, right? Like what you need for student support. The board needs to know what we need for student support is what I'm
Okay.
getting at.
I got you now.
Thank you.
Amy?
Thank you, Karen. So, Pam, on page 20 of the packet that you all sent to us, the $6 million that you've got listed, is that the draft of the priorities that the team is thinking? And how, if any, changes will need to be made? Because, for example, the tutors and the transportation for the tutoring program is in there, but with only, 7 to 8 weeks left of school without that program actually starting yet, will those numbers change? And will we get something updated?
Okay, I'm going to take the first part of the question. What will you, I think, are referring to, Amy, is the ESSER 2 spending plan as of April 20th.
Yes.
And as Kevin said, that this application was due April 19th. And about 11:30 in the morning on April 19th, the state sent out notification that you can now have another week to submit it. Well, doing our due diligence, we were ready and we were about to submit it, so we did, knowing full well that we can make revisions to it. And we were concerned about the timeline. So this reflects what was submitted with all the rationale, and it was based on, I know we've shared information on this with the board previously, but this reflects the final thought process of what we could handle out of this $6 million. And again, I defer to Dr. Gata and Dr. Robinson to talk about the actual programs and the tutoring, because we did start some of that already. So I will definitely ask Dr. Robinson to clarify some of that.
Yes, thank you, Pam. I appreciate your explanation. Yes, keep in mind that this is, as we go through the 2 years of use of these funds, there will be times when, just as Amy, you brought up, there are times when we plan to spend it in a particular area, and for some reason, such as nobody wants to work as a tutor and we're unable to hire a tutor, that money doesn't get spent. This spending plan you see in front of you is revisable. It can be revised, sent into the state for revision if we have to move some money that we're not able to use for that purpose to another purpose. So and keep in mind too, this money has to span those 2 years. We were very disheartened as we went through this in some of the things that we really hoped that we would be able to build into ESSER 2. We were unable to. The money just, as you put those things in and you estimate the costs, suddenly you're at the $6 million and you're done. So we've discussed things that we have sort of set aside and said when we get the amount that we are going to be receiving for what I'll refer to as ESSER 3, just for the sake of this discussion, we want to start looking at those things too. Our priorities continue to be social, emotional health for our students and faculty, and secondly, for accelerating our students' learning. Those are our priorities and will continue to be our priorities. We do have other folks in town that have some other ideas, and so we are going to really need the board to be looking for the top priority being what's good in the best interest of our students. It was brought to our attention at the meeting that there is thoughts that we should be putting things in here for capital improvement, and therefore decisions are made. If we do those things, then there won't be as many direct supports for our students.
Okay. Bob DiLorenzo.
Hi. I guess this message is for Pam. Pam, the time frame around all this stuff you had stated is what, May 24th, give or take?
That should be the date that the state is supposed to share info with us, being dollar amount and guidance on how the money can be used.
Okay, I'm just worried about the timing and so forth because although we've been much better in terms of communication with the board, I'm just hoping that we stay on top of that and we're not, kind of the last ones to find out, if that makes sense.
I think we'll have adequate time to put something together and bring it to you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so we will be moving on to utilities.
And I kind of covered that area unless anyone has any further questions about utilities. All the other areas, water, we do appear to be trending on budget for those.
Anyone have any? What's this? Bob David has his hand raised. Or is that, nope, that's Bob DiLorenzo. I'm sorry. Bob DiLorenzo, your hand is still up. And he's not around. Okay. Seeing no questions, we'll move on to special ed report.
Hi, everybody. So I think you can check this time. It should match beautifully the out-of-district placements and your enrollment report. I think we have solved that issue, so that should be all set. Pam already alluded to the two areas of deficit, the tuition, which you guys are well aware of, and the testing services and clinical costs. And if you guys have any specific questions regarding testing services and clinical costs, I'm happy to, speak a little more in detail on those. But that is risk assessments, IEE requests, clinical services like behavior technicians or BCBA services. That's what's in there. When Kevin found some extra leftover money, he was able to help us out a little bit with some of that, and I'm hoping that that's also where we'll put anything that's left over from our COVID money in addition. But Pam has assured me that we have money to cover that spot, so I'm feeling okay about it, but a little stressed because it still says negative. So if you guys have any specific questions about clinical costs, I'm happy to go into as much detail as I can without revealing anything personal. And everything else is tracking on as it should be for the rest of the year.
Okay. Amy?
I just wanted to take a minute to thank you, Heather, for really mining into that report because, as I mentioned, it was driving me crazy month after month seeing it not line up. So I appreciate the additional categories and really having it clear. I wondered where the comparison to this time last year went. And I think that's probably a question not for you, but will that be added back so we can see some sort of a trend?
Can you repeat that, Amy? I'm not sure what you're asking.
That's okay. So in our enrollment report, we've got the total. And then in the gray column to the right, it usually will show where we were this time last year in a comparison. But that's on my document anyway, 4/1/2020 is blank. So I think that's just whoever prepared the report can update the data so we can have some comparison next month.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can look into that.
Okay. All right. Bob David has his hand
Amy
up.
will get you those numbers.
Bob David?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Hi, Heather. I was just wondering, are you getting any reports from birth to 3 to see what we're getting to the district next year?
Yes, we're having a large influx, Bob. I have lots of reports from birth to 3. We have a steady influx right now, and I can already tell you that over the summer we have 12 additional evaluations and assessments from birth to 3 that I already know we have to do, and I'm sure that number will increase.
And just to remind the board, as soon as the child becomes 3 years of age, it becomes the responsibility of the Stratford Public Schools.
You're breaking up, Bob.
Sorry about that.
I can fill in for you guys. It's we have 16 that we're in the process that'll turn 3 before the end of the school year, and 12 additional that'll turn 3 over the summer. Those numbers tend to go up, with move-ins and other things that happen, but that's where we're at. I will have to have a team of evaluators set for the summer to do our preschool evaluations.
Okay, thank you. You have your hand up again?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Gotta find my page. I'm gonna move on to the next item as soon as I find the pages. And my paper has gone AWOL. Here we are. Food services.
You do have the monthly report, as we explained last time. Will always be 2 months behind, and this reflects January. As you're well aware, we continue to be in a deficit position because of the pandemic. And now that students are returning 5 days a week, we're hoping to turn that around. We've worked with Sodexo to try to minimize costs, had laid off quite a few of their workers, and they're constantly trying to mitigate that loss as best as possible. But this is a statewide issue right now. And unfortunately, we started the year with a significant deficit. So we're working on that. We have heard that potentially we can utilize some of the ESSER monies to pay down loss directly related to COVID. So we're working with Sodexo to actually calculate how much that is. It could be $300,000 to $500,000 for the year. So we are looking at that, and hopefully we can get a little help. If you have any other questions, we're happy to.
Pam, it's not really a question, it's a statement with regard to their contract. And I know that we were looking at other companies. Are we still doing that?
No, if you recall, we actually had approved a waiver for this year. And it's interesting you asked that question, Karen, because about an hour ago, I received an email from the state indicating that we have to move forward in putting together a renewal for next year. And then next year, we absolutely have to go out to do an RFP. And I am working with that third-party consultant. I have a meeting with her on Wednesday to kind of put something together. And again, the whole intent with the consultant is to make certain that we put together an RFP that truly is a break-even program, so the district never ends up in this position again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is something that, for the life of me, I don't understand how we have ended up in this position to this extent. You know, any other business, when something goes awry, they take the hit, just like we have to take the hit when the budget is cut. And I just don't think it's acceptable in what they're doing. You know, and it's not that they're a bad company. I just think that this business practice is a bad practice. So I'm hoping that we'll find a solution to it for the break even, because that's fair.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
I mean, we supply them with equipment. Some of the stuff that we supply to me is above and beyond. So anyway, thank you so much. Anybody have any questions about food services?
I do, real quickly. Pam, could you clarify when you say this year and next year, just so we understand the academic year that you're talking
Sure. About? Yeah, I realize that gets confusing. We are working to put together before June 30th, some type of an agreement with Sodexo that will take us through next school year. So it will cover July 1 through next June 30th, 2022. During that same period of time, we're required to do a formal bid, an RFP, and we have to secure a new company, whether it's the same company or a different company, a new contract. I'm sorry, I misspoke. We have to put in place a new contract at that point after the RFP process, which is intensive and very comprehensive. It's a very time-consuming and very detailed RFP, and the whole process takes months. So you'll be hearing a lot about that next year, but we do have Sodexo for next year, and then we'll do the RFP next year, and whether we end up staying with Sodexo or another company, the board will make that decision probably next April.
Thank you. I just wanted you to state clearly in the meeting, because sometimes these conversations don't really translate as well when you're rewatching the videos. So
good point.
Thanks.
Okay. We're going to move on to enrollment update because we're running low on time here.
enrollment is very close to what it was this time last month. Not a great deal of changes. We are getting a lot of registrations in for kindergarten. They will not show till we roll that over to the next school year because all the registrations are for next year, so they won't show here till then.
All right. Any questions about enrollment? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the budget transfers. We're going to start, actually, Pam, I'll let you explain the first. We'll break it down one at a time and then vote on each one.
I just quickly share with you that you're going to see the budget transfers on your agendas in much more detail, and this is as a result of the financial control audit, because while I think overall the board has always done this appropriately, it just wasn't hitting the minutes as detailed as the auditors feel it should be. And most of these are just housekeeping. The first one is simply expenses that were in a salary line item. That's where they were budgeted, and it's just not appropriate because they're actually purchased services. So we're just taking that amount and moving it to the proper account. And as Susan noted in the explanation, we did budget properly for fiscal year 22. So this is just, again, housekeeping, trying to clean things up so our state report will be reflected.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion for budget transfer number 1.
So moved.
And who was that?
Amy?
Amy. I need a second, please.
Second, Bob DiLorenzo.
Thank you. Any discussion?
A question, do you mind?
Okay. Shanice?
So next month, when I look at the updated finance document, I'm going to see in the adjustment section these numbers reflected?
Yes, you will. You'll see a reduction in one account, one area by $157,000, and an addition in another.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? We'll take a roll call vote. Janice?
Yes.
Okay. Amy?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Can't hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Andrea?
Yes.
Bob DiLorenzo?
Yes.
Bob David?
Yes.
Okay, and the chair votes yes. That goes on to the board, correct?
Correct.
Okay, budget transfer number 2 for $57,005.18.
There's this budget is to cover the deficit balance as a result of the UI lease that we have spoken about, and it's also transfer funds to cover the deficit balance of tuition accounts. And again, we budgeted accordingly in fiscal year 22, and we're asking to use the projected savings in the workers' comp account to cover the deficits.
Okay.
The motion to approve budget transfer number 2.
Okay, I need this.
Second, Bob DiLorenzo.
Thank you. Any questions?
Me again, sorry guys. Pam, did you say earlier when you were going through the finance doc that there was a surplus for utilities?
I said that there could be a
projected. So
no, there's a deficit in utilities overall, but it's a little less because we have some savings in a few schools for electricity.
Okay, my bad. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Roll call vote. Janice?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Bob DiLorenzo?
Yes.
Bob David?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. That goes on. Unanimous. Number 3.
Number 3 is, there's not a total dollar amount, but it's $440,000 $767.89. And this is truly just housekeeping. Again, as we go through the financial controls audit, you will see the recommendation that we not leave any really accounts in deficit for any length of time. You can always make the argument salaries change so much, particularly September, October, November. But at this point in the fiscal year, obviously, we feel comfortable making these moves to get rid of the deficit balances. And we're just shifting money from one salary account to another. And Susan did an incredible job giving you details on why an account had extra money and why another account needed the transfer. That's really all this is.
Any questions?
Motion to approve budget transfer number 3.
Second, Bob DiLorenzo.
Thank you. Any discussion? No. Okay, seeing none, roll call vote. We'll start with Bob David,
Yes.
Bob DiLorenzo,
Yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Janice,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay, number 4.
Number 4 is exactly the same type of a transfer for housekeeping, except it's non-certified salaries. And the deficits in these accounts we're suggesting may be offset by savings from a vacant nurse position.
Do you have an amount on this one?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sure I do. $48,983.16.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve budget transfer number 4.
Second, Amy.
Amy, second. Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote again. Bob David?
Sorry, I wasn't quick enough on muting. Are we,
I'm sorry.
are we
Hold
to
on,
fill
Bob.
that position? Pam, are we planning to fill that position at some point?
Yes, we're still trying, and if we do, we'll still have adequate funds through the balance of this year. It's just extremely difficult to fill nursing positions right now, which I'm sure you can imagine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Bob David?
Yes.
Bob DiLorenzo?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Janice?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. And number 5.
Number 5 is simply to address what came out of the planning committee when the board votes on whether or not to move forward with Snyder Architect for the facility assessment proposal. You had asked, first of all, if we could confirm that the $40,000 in the capital plan that the town has is available for this, and Renee Sarah did confirm that it was. And as you may recall, the proposal had a guaranteed fee no higher than $60,000. So we are suggesting that we cover that transfer of funds from workers' comp for the balance of $20,000. Since the work will start when school is out, which is June, we can utilize this year's operating budget for that amount.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve budget transfer number 5.
Allison?
Second.
I need a second is
Second,
Janice.
Janice, yes.
Thank you. Any questions? Any discussion?
That's a quick question. So it doesn't show an amount here. Do we
I'm
need
sorry,
to
it is.
update it?
I wrote it down. It's $20,000.
Okay, Teresa, is there any way to update that just for our records?
It will be in the minutes reflected for the $20,000.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and again, any other questions? Seeing none. Okay, we'll start with Janice this time.
Yes, ma'am.
Amy?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Bob DiLorenzo?
Yes.
Bob David?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, and then moving on, updates regarding the proposed budget for 2021, 2022.
As we mentioned, we met with the town last week for our budget workshop, and they are planning to have a budget finalized, I believe they said by May 12th. So hopefully by then we'll know what our final appropriation is.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be later than May 12th because the state gave them extra time, but just so that you're prepared for that. Hopefully it'll be May 12th though.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other business?
May I ask a question, Karen?
Yes.
Pam, Janet, considering, during that budget workshop, I heard you, Dr. Robinson, advocating for the full request. It looks like we're not going to get it. I'm sure you guys are already having ideas, right, on how to adjust. When will that be shared with board members in terms of what some of those adjustments that you're considering, to balance the budget would be?
Yes, well, you'll see that there is an amount to cover some of the positions that would be eliminated in the operating budget that have been moved over to ESSER 2 funds.
And we're hoping to have the board perhaps, again, if the town has a final appropriation, have the board finalize its budget in May, but that might wait till June. We have to see when the town completes their part.
Okay. All right. Any other business? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Amy.
Second, Bob Lorenzo.
Bob DiLorenzo, second. And can I do this as an all or none?
Oh, yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Board guys.
No, you're not opposed. Okay, we'll see you at the board meeting. Thank you.